it feels like we are experiencing a Punisher renaissance. Frank Castle is a part of the MCU like he's never been, born again last year, One Last Kill's coming up. He's in Brand New Day. If you'd have told me when he was in Daredevil season 2, I would have laughed in your face. But it's a great time to be a fan of Marvel TV in general. So equally, what better time to look back on The Punisher, a show that I feel like you don't hear a lot about. People don't talk about this in the same way they talk about the original Daredevil or Defenders or something like that. This is by far the grittiest the MCU has ever been. There's not a whiff of comic book pulp or surrealism. This is just a really intense show about PTSD and veterans and
War, the consequences of war as well. Yeah.
yes, and it's so gory and it's so brutal. I think it's exactly what a Punisher show needs to be. But hot damn, this is some heavy shit.
We've seen The Punisher the first time round in season 2. It's such a strong introduction. He's a totally different character. There are some really dark things that happen in the MCU, but then, my God, when you when you go into Punisher, it's a man who's too angry to die.
This is the Out of Time Film Podcast, where your hosts Tom and John discuss everything from blockbuster films to TV and games like there's no tomorrow.
It's such a very interesting character study to see him trying to find the source of his pain, trying to find out who he is exactly, but also he's punishing himself. He believes that the world is not his ally anymore. So it's very interesting. He thinks too harshly on himself. So he's a very complex character. I feel like John Bernthal was going to say, let me tell you something.
I think it'd be great if we got this Punisher perspective in Spider-Man. He sits him down and he's just like, let me tell you something. Because that's I know that Peter Parker has gone through a lot of stuff, but when you compare it to the Punisher, it's nothing, right? It's so interesting to follow this machine. He's barely human. The things that people survive in this show, I mean, by the end, there is a level of me where I'm like, okay, guys, we got to start killing some of these people because they are surviving. Punisher especially is surviving so many, not even near-death experiences. This guy should be dead. And I like how you're saying he is too angry to die. He's the Darth Maul of the MCU right now, fueled by his pure anger. This guy can walk away from anything, and I just love the amount of times that he's covered in blood, he's been beaten to a pulp with numerous weapons, and he's just limping, making what I can only describe as John Bernthal noises, just limping.
And he's like looking away and
Yeah.
exerts his attention to somewhere else. It's very distinct. When you first see him with Daredevil, it makes you question how a character like him collides. But with this show, as you said, Tom, it's dark, gritty, and you absolutely see that in the visual elements. Like from the get-go, there's no hope. It just feels so hopeless. There is this emptiness all the way throughout the show. That's what Frank feels all the way through. This is some sort of void he's going through.
We literally meet Frank working on a construction site, spending day and night slamming away into concrete, just smashing it, absorbing the physical pain of just hard labor, consumed by this one thought. There's this element of can he push past that? And the interesting thing about this show that I do think is somewhat complicated by what we have now with Born Again and from the trailer of One Last Kill. The end of the show, Frank, he hasn't let go of his anger, but he's found some level of love again and peace. And I think the show questions, can you find peace after experiencing this kind of thing? And I think the show says that yes, you can. And so I think it's interesting that we have revisited Frank Castle since, and he is very much the same. I do wonder how canon this show is. I mean, it is canon, but
Yeah.
how much are we actually going to be engaging with what this show says? Or is it just going to be more along the lines of bringing back XYZ characters? It's a given at this point, but John Bernthal is staggeringly good in the role. It just has to be said, one of the greatest comic book castings. I feel like we say that all the time because so many comic book castings are amazing, but
Yeah.
he's just really good. It is a meme, but you know the scene where he has the flashback and he's like, no. Very funny, but also in context, that scene is devastating. Him having this nightmare vision of all the people that he loves being murdered again, and he just is tied down and can't do anything to stop it. John Bernthal sells that insanely well. I love him. What a great performance that anchors this show.
It makes you think as well what they have planned for Punisher. Is he going to appear in season 2, Born Again?
I don't think so.
It's also leading on to Brand New Day, so it makes you question how is he going to collide with Spider-Man. I really hope there's going to be a great scene with Spider-Man and Punisher just talking, like have a really quiet moment.
Like pretty much all of the Marvel Netflix shows, the Punisher, as we know him now in the MCU, has had this transition from very gritty, serious, realistic to someone who can be in a film with Spider-Man and the Hulk. I think it would be really great to see Punisher do some more fantastical stuff. And as I say, people do walk away from some very intense stuff. Agent Madani gets shot in the head and she walks away from that.
And she has PTSD as well from it.
Of course, everyone's got PTSD. I want to see Punisher get more comic booky. It seems like One Last Kill is going to be on the similar beaten track as this show. I think it's cool that he's going to be with Spider-Man and Hulk and with Daredevil. He gets a chance to be a bit more fantastical because we've had a lot of the very serious down-to-earth aspects. So let's see him fight Doctor Doom.
Yeah, let him be silly. For once, let him be silly fighting against Doctor Doom. Let's see how that goes.
In between Doomsday and Secret Wars, we'll get another film, which is just Frank Castle stalking Doctor Doom in the city.
He's like, let me tell you something about Doom. Yeah, it feels very standalone. There's one scene where Lewis, he's going through an awful time trying to understand his purpose after war and how society treats him as a soldier. He just loses faith in everybody. So then he just starts planting bombs. It's very much like a case of who are you exactly after war? And then does war change you? Can you find peace? And I think that's the hard-hitting questions the show explores. Like with Curtis, with his metaphor about the hole, how people treat you when you're down the hole, but then when someone comes down to your hole, like, hey, I've been down here with you, we got to help each other. So I think that's what Frank is always has been. He's always been down the hole and you might not accept help.
The mainstream MCU, whatever that means anymore, it would be afraid to do something like that. In Winter Soldier, we see Sam Wilson giving his talks to veterans. That is heavy, but it's not nearly as heavy as what we get to in this show. This show really doesn't shy away from the fact that after experiencing war, soldiers come back and are abandoned and are forgotten, and that's the reality of it. War is nothing but a tool for the rich to profit. That's just the unfortunate truth of it. War is pointless. There's a reason why every story you've ever heard about it is horrific and focuses on how dreadful it is. And this show doesn't shy away from that. Somebody like Lewis, who you're mentioning, you know, he becomes a terrorist. He's making bombs and he's threatening people on live radio and calling out the institutions. And the thing is that he has a point and he's doing all these awful things and he's going about it in the completely wrong way. But he is tragic. You can so understand what he's going through. And his death is heartbreaking because Frank understands. Frank isn't going to shoot him. He's just like, no, I got to let this guy blow himself up. I'm going to let him recite his speech about the gun because that's all he's known. And this kid, whoever he once was, is broken now. That's the system. That's what happens in war. You can't downplay that. If you're going to make a show that is about this, you've got to make it rough. And I'm very happy this show is rough because there's no getting around it.
It just goes into really heavy stuff. There are some imperfections. I mean, the show does feel a little bit all over the place. I mean, the show didn't really invest me as much. Aside from Lewis and Frank, I think there was some stuff that I just think I wish there was a bit more work on that. I think with Donnie in season 1, there was some very interesting stuff that was happening. She wants to find out exactly what happened with the secret project. And then I think what could have been worked upon as well for the villain for this, Billy Russo, aka Jigsaw. I think
I've got things.
I know what you're gonna say
about Jigsaw.
I know what you're gonna say. I know what you're gonna say about Jigsaw. We'll get to that. The villains should be way more built upon. Like, come on, we're talking about Frank Castle here. So I think with a villain that would need to go up against Frank, Billy Russo kind of did in season 1, but I feel like it needs something, not two unstoppable characters, but you need something on that level to make feel like there's some intensity. And I think that kind of lacked that intensity in some parts.
Yeah, I agree 100%. The thing is with the Marvel Netflix shows, now we have talked about Daredevil on the pod before. That show is a masterpiece and it is 100% the best of
cinema.
It's the best of the Marvel Netflix shows, but pretty much all the other ones suffer from the same issue of 13 episodes with such long episode lengths. Normally we're sitting here and we say we want shows to be longer, we want them to be, but I don't know what it is. Something about the Marvel TV shows, and this is no exception, they struggle to invest me. It's such a slow burn. It's such a slow burn. I think that's because they built these shows to be binged. They built these shows to be dropped all at once. And so they're like, oh yeah, we're Netflix. And so we're just going to let you watch the show rather than saying we need to every episode feel like it has a nice beginning, middle, and end and something to hook you into the next episode. These shows feel sometimes very difficult. You know, I'm watching this show preparing for this episode and our discussion. And at times I'm just like, God damn it. I don't want to watch the next episode. I'm bored.
That was me when I was like trying to get through it. I was like,
yeah,
Frank,
exactly.
Yeah. Oh,
So it's like,
Frank, you did something stupid. Oh, Frank, you silly goose. What have you done?
You little rascal. You little scamp, Frank Castle. It is sometimes a little bit difficult, and that's not to say the show doesn't have some really great stuff and really powerful stuff to say. I think both seasons, once you get over the halfway mark, we begin to move with a bit more, force. Season 2, we follow this priest, and I was so uninterested in the priest. Every time they cut back, I was just like, this guy, go away. But then by the end, I was like, okay, I'm enjoying more what they're saying about this character and faith and religion and another angle of somebody who has experienced trauma.
And I think I had that same problem with Micro. I don't know, it just didn't really stick with me with Micro. Obviously, there was some really strong stuff with Frank trying to kind of like help with Micro's family.
The later on stuff when Micro is breaking down and getting really sick of the life that he's living and not being able to experience these moments that he's watching happening, I think that's so gripping. At the same time, we have the narrative where Micro is being cucked by Frank Castle, and
I was like, "What the heck? This is a storyline? What is?"
And they're just like, and he's just getting angry at him and being like, "You stay away from my wife."
Yeah, and then he said, "Don't worry, Castle. My wife, she's so hot, right? You can kiss her." And he said, "I was like, what? What's going on?"
And Micro's like, "Frank, I'm hung like a moose," and I'm just like, "What? What?" Like, genuinely,
I'm sorry, but this is in the same show that we're talking about how dark this is, and it's just like, yeah, I'm hung like a moose. I'm like, what is going on?
I enjoy that. I like those elements.
Yes.
We have so much other stuff that it feels like, maybe we'll refocus the season on Frank and Micro's relationship and tone down some of that other stuff, because I'm agreeing with everything you're saying, and this structure of show is very difficult to kind of get right, and I think this series does struggle. I got really bored at the beginning when Madani's trying to find this guy who was in the war with Frank, and she's trying to find out like where he went and blah blah blah. That didn't interest me, but then later on there's this whole subplot where she loses her partner and they're trying to find the bug in her office, and that stuff I found was so much more interesting, and how Billy was playing her, and Billy is such an interesting character. And another idea of after war, some people just lose their entire morals. They don't believe in anything anymore because they've seen the worst of humanity and have been exploited by the worst of humanity, so they just think, fuck it, I'm going to work as a mercenary. All I care about is money. I don't care about people. I will sell out my best friend. That's so interesting. And then that transitions to him having this PTSD in season 2. And that's where we get Jigsaw.
Jigsaw! Not movie Jigsaw series, no. We're talking about Billy Russo from season 1, who
of course.
I think there was some pretty strong stuff. I mean, the bloody fight at the end of season 1, just insane. Frank scrapes Billy Russo's face down, and it's like, what is going on? This is insane. Yeah. And then cut to season 2. And he's got a few cuts, a bit like, no, he got paper cuts on his face. That's what it looks like.
Billy is played by Ben Barnes. Beautiful man. Beautiful man. And
Handsome.
that is Prince Caspian right there. We start the season, he's wearing this mask, and the mask has loads of cracks on it, and we're building towards this reveal. And people keep on saying, Billy's ugly now. And I'm rubbing my hands together. I'm getting excited.
They're cooking.
This is gonna be good. I want like Willem Dafoe in Poor Things. I want a face that is just mangled together. We are dealing with a somewhat lower budget. Netflix, okay, fine. There's a dramatic reveal where we see his face for the first time, and someone in the bus is looking at him like, oh god, what a freak. And it's just a couple of cuts. I was so and they call him Jigsaw once or twice. It's like, what? He is still sexier than 90% of the world's population. I mean, come on.
With the prosthetic, guys, there's some competition. I mean,
my girlfriend even said he looks hotter with the scars. That's not an opinion that anyone should hold.
That's true!
It is true, but that is not what we should be doing for Jigsaw. He should be ugly. I want him to be
terrifying.
Ugly.
It should be way more terrifying.
Yeah, I want to look at him and be afraid, and that was such a disappointment. But I actually really like his storyline in season 2. And his eventual death is so poignant. He doesn't die in some spectacular action. He catches a bullet from Madani in a very frantic battle. He gets the bullet fragments removed, but it's too late. He's bleeding out, and he begs Curtis to be with him so he doesn't die alone. This fear of being alone. You know, you're accepted into the army. You're accepted into a brotherhood. And of course, to lose that is going to be so difficult. But then to die... Billy's whole thing in season 2 is he wants to cultivate essentially a family. He wants to cultivate people who understand they're not going to take any shit from anyone else, and they're not going to take anyone else's lies. And so for him to die alone, that is his greatest fear. And Curtis promises he'll be there, but he doesn't go. He sends Frank instead. And there's this moment where you think Frank is going to sit down and be with him while he dies. And that's the merciful thing to do. Give him that one last thing. But this is the Punisher we're talking about. And he just shoots him. And that's that. No second chances. And that was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, after the harsh roundabouts of like what's going on with the show and the slow burners, that to me was such a profound ending. Like after what Billy Rosso did throughout the show, absolutely betraying Frank, he doesn't really deserve a peaceful. I mean, there was a lot of regrets. He just wants to be with people that he understands, and I think that's a really hard thing. Not everybody can escape from PTSD. It's terrifying for him. I love that.
But even then, after Billy dies, one of the final things we see of Frank in that season is him, and he's had this relationship with this teenage girl in this season. He's protected her, and she's been like a daughter figure to him. So the final thing we see from Frank, as opposed to Billy, who is on his own, is him hugging a loved one, which is just so wonderful. And he doesn't stop being the Punisher, because the final thing we see is him as the Punisher just going ham on another gang. But he has Amy, he has Curtis, and I think that's going to be very interesting to see where that then goes in One Last Kill, the upcoming special. But ultimately, it feels like the Punisher isn't spoken about in the same way as the other Marvel Netflix shows. People consider the other 5 as this dead universe, with 4 shows that end with enticing threads still hanging when they were cancelled, and the team up that brought them together. The Punisher wasn't that. Season 2 doesn't really leave you wanting more in that same way. It's not adapting as much comic stuff. It doesn't cross over as much. It's much more grounded. So I feel like people have forgotten about it somewhat, which is a huge shame, because this show is very good, and it speaks about stuff that the MCU may never speak about in the same way ever again. I hope that people do revisit this, because it's a bit boring, but it's really great.
Yeah, I think, as you said, there's a slow burner to it. And then one last thing to say as well is that we obviously got someone from Daredevil, and that's Karen Page.
Of course.
And I love how this show builds upon layers with Karen as well. How Karen helps, because there isn't a lot of characters that look out for Frank. It's wholesome but sad as well.
It's people who are willing to understand Frank, and Karen is a rare person like that. We get some really nice, like, small connections to the other Marvel Netflix stuff as well. Detective Mahoney from Daredevil, also a big part of season 2. Yeah. What are you going to give Punisher out of 10?
I feel like a 7 out of 10.
I agree. I'm also going to 7. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you're listening on YouTube and you liked it, you can like and subscribe if you want to see more. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, you can follow and give us a 5-star review if you think we're worthy. And next week, we're going to be doing Invincible Season 4, another comic book thing. Bit more lighthearted.
Wow, yeah, this is a very packed season, guys.
Still gory. I haven't seen one episode, so we'll see. We'll see. Send us an email.
Yeah, so you can follow us on Instagram at Out of Time Film Party, our incredible thumbs thumbnails from Zain, on Twitter for more thoughts from Tom and me, and TikTok to see edited clips, which are all also on Instagram, Reels, and YouTube Shorts. And you can find links to that all in the description below. Thanks to Elle for the excellent theme, and Ronan for logos as always. And I think that's everything. Takeaway given.
Give nothing back.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.